Sure.
Good morning, everyone. This is Ron. It is Saturday morning, uh, already January 7th. So we've been into the new year, a full week. Uh, and I hope you've had a great week. So uh, we'll start where we left off with questions and see if anyone have any questions or comments or anything you've observed this week. On last week, we followed up again on some questions, but we sort of went back over First Samuel chapter 1 and just trying to pull that together spiritually. There's so much material in that, and I'm sure we will visit again, and even today if someone has a inkling to do so. But we talked about the relationship of masculine and feminine energy, and I don't think we can talk enough about that. We made a comparison to Adam and what happened at the creation, and looking at uh, the man there, uh, and his relationship with his wife. Ethanol, I couldn't remember his name. So we looked at that, and we talked about the beautiful harmony uh, with that relationship. And with all the relationship, even if you look at the relationship with Pilanol, the other wife, and with Eli, the priest, uh, the master, the mingling, the coming together, the beautiful harmony and the dance of masculine and feminine energy, and just showing that uh, where that should look like when we're in rhythm or we're in harmony. So we look at that story, and the birth of it being Samuel, the birth of it being El being God in the land, and what that means. And so I hope I as I said, we'll probably go back to it at another time, and I hope that resonated with everyone. Uh, so with that said, any thoughts or questions about anything that you may have seen this week?
Good morning, everyone. Ron, to kind of like piggyback off of what you said about relationships and being in harmony. Um, in any relationship, and I say any, I mean any. In a relationship with life, you, I have to ask myself, how cooperative am I with life? Or how cooperative am I in this situation? So, um, when a person is cooperative, harmony may not be at the apex of it, yet you will see some harmony in it. Um, there are relationships that I have with people just by me being cooperative with them and seeing me be cooperative in life, I can use some profanity around them. Yet there are people that are not cooperative in life, and they can be talking to them, and they will not raise their voice, they will not use any profanity. There's no harmony there. And I'm not promoting profanity or anything like that. I'm just saying when an individual is cooperative, I would much rather deal with a cooperative Republican than an uncooperative Democrat or independent. So we almost have to examine how cooperative are we. And um, just in my own experience, when life uses me, I'm being cooperative, there's some good stuff that gonna come from it, and it'll be some
Hmm.
stuff that, and stuff shouldn't be the, I shouldn't say stuff. It's another word I could use, but things are gonna happen to me that I don't know why. Hey, what you showing favor with me for? Hey, how did I
Yeah.
get this perk right here? So if you want harmony, how cooperative are you as an individual? How cooperative are you at your job site or workplace? How cooperative are you in your home? How cooperative are you when you drive and you got
Yeah.
other people? Are you? That's it right there,
Yeah.
boss.
Yeah. I like the word. I think you the word embrace comes to mind when you say cooperative. And uh, it just reminded me of something you said. I like that example, George, because I don't think, or I've grown to think in these 63 years of me not being cooperative in every situation. I've grown to see that there are no coincidences in my life and in life, period. I think so. Uh, the faster you embrace situations and be in harmony, the more you do find, the faster you do find that peace and to see the light in it. Uh, so yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Uh, and the only thing I add to that is, as I have grown in that area, the other thing is not always to set my expectations to what I think a situation is supposed to look like, or what should come out of it. So you just live. You just breathe, as we're talking about with that scripture in Samuel. Just inhale, exhale, and let life be what it be, and you just get in harmony with whatever happens, and there will be lessons to learn. There will be lessons to teach, and there is always opportunity to embrace situations in life. So, I agree with you. If I understand what you're saying, is there anyone else that any questions or comments to what George just said?
Ron, good morning. This is Barbara. I liked what you said also about not putting your expectations around things, because when we do that, it assumes that we know exactly what is best for us all the time. And we may not. Maybe the universe has something even more wondrous in store for us, but we set our expectations and bottle them up and put them in a box and put boundaries around our expectations. And two things can happen. The first one is our expectations are not met, and then we get mad because they're not. The second thing is when we put boxes around our expectations, we don't allow the universe to help us be as creative as we can be, to open up even more possibilities other than the one that we had wrapped in our box of expectations. Yeah. So if we don't set the expectations, there's nothing for us to be sad and angry about. So we, as you said, go with the flow. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Like the details of that. Anyone else?
This is Evelyn. I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. I was just listening to what Barbara was saying too about I just lost my thought, but what Barbara had just said. But anyway, in lieu to what she just said, I realized that we all must enjoy the journey that we're on. She was saying something about we don't allow the Creator to divinely guide us, but I realized on this journey, we have to enjoy the journey. We can't look behind. We can't look forward. We have to live in the moment. And I've come to the conclusion about it, we have to live in the moment and just let the divine guide us in a divine way. Enjoy the experience. It may not be what we want,
but we have to realize that nothing bad can happen to us. There's always good for us. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Evelyn. You're right. You're exactly right. And that is the key, as you and Barbara said, learning to embrace this journey, learning to embrace it. We spiritually we're sort of like toddlers. We don't know what is best for us. We see the things we have experienced in our limited capacities, and those things are pleasurable to us, and that's what we expect all the time. But we don't see that some lessons also may not be or start off looking at something pleasant. It may start off as looking at something unpleasant or something we totally don't understand. And as a toddler, you learn to trust those who love you, those who are your caregivers. And so, yeah, beautiful start. Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Miss Barbara, how you doing? For clarification, I have expectation. 2 weeks ago, I was turned down for a job opportunity. I expected to get that job, and although I was rejected by it, I just wanted to know why I was rejected by it. Yet I did say myself, well, George, this may not be your season. This ain't your first rodeo of being rejected for a job, and 2 weeks later they come back and, hey, we need to interview you. So I have expectations for what I want. And I don't necessarily practice the principle in my maneuverability of maneuvering around here, going with the flow. Nah, I am the flow. And I'm not against with what anyone has said. I'm not against it. If that's what you say, that's what you say. I'm just saying that when I maneuver out here, I got an expectation. Now, if I don't get the expectation, I will be a little disappointed. However, I do have to ask myself, why didn't you get it? Maybe you wasn't supposed to get it, and it serves you well. So,
George, thank you. I think I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. And when I mean expectations, I mean to box yourself in so much that you are totally off balance by whatever happens. But what I hear you saying is, yeah, when I do this, and the word expectation, I guess could be a little broader from my perspective. So I hear what you're saying. But the thing that's important is what you just said afterwards. When you didn't get it, you simply wanted to know why, and you were ready to move on. You didn't stay there. You didn't hold that in. You didn't allow that to create anger or whatever in you so that you couldn't move forward. You just took it and rolled on. And that's what I think Evelyn was saying also about life doesn't give you everything you expect or you want. But what you do with that result is the key to being effectively balanced.
oh, well, we on the same page, Miss Barbara. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else on this topic or anything else that you may have seen? Okay.
Ron, one more thing. I'm sorry. uh,
There's no
we've been talking about how what happens in the physical mirrors the spiritual, and we can see what happened with that speaker of the house kind of thing. There was so much confusion and so much bickering and so much divisiveness that it took 15 votes for a man in his own party. Well, that's simply reflective of all that's going on, all the chaos that's in the physical. And it's up to us not to let that deter us, not to let that distract us, not to let that get us unfocused about where we are in the universe, because it doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter what the confusion is. We are the ones who set the tone, regardless of what's seen in the physical, by what we know about the spiritual.
Very well. And I think the funny thing, I woke up this morning with a thought on my mind I thought was kind of weird because it came out of nowhere. But when I tried to think back if I was dreaming or when I went to bed thinking about it, I couldn't. But what I was thinking about was the miracles that Jesus performed and all the lessons he taught and the Beatitudes and whatnot. And then his encounters with the scribes and the Pharisees and how those things went. I don't recall him getting into an altercation with any other Romans until it came to the crucifixion and the trial. Prior to that, his only encounter, I remember one of the centurions, I think, came to him because his son was ill, or someone in his house was ill, and he wanted Jesus to heal him. And then, I got to thinking about that. What does that mean? So, as Barbara mentioned, the politics and all that other stuff, I don't see where his concern was in the church. His concern was with leadership and what leadership was doing to the people. His concern was with us seeing truth versus dealing with religion and how far religion had led us from truth. So I agree wholeheartedly with what Barbara just said. Seeing who we are and the matter at hand and keeping the focus on love and peace and harmony and forgiveness and those things. And those other things that kind of emit a lot of energy out there. Those are things that are real. They're things that are genuine and that need taken care of. But just as the previous conversation, being in harmony with what we feel and see in front of us, or inside of us rather, all of that is addressed. It may not be addressed in the timeliness or the way that we see it, but we address all of that internally by staying on focus. So I just wanted to add that, and I just think that was well said, and the timeliness of it was thank you. Anyone else?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Janet Simmons. I was invited on the line by George Watson. I'm Monique Watson's aunt. I live in Marion, South Carolina. And I didn't hear the comment that George made, but I would like to say what's coming to me is everybody has a purpose. And we hear that quote in one of the prophets that says, I have a plan for you, a plan to prosper you and to give you an expected end. but that's not the scripture that I really want to zoom in on. But I like to say that all of us have a plan. All of us have a purpose. And if we're going to be in alignment with the Creator God, we got to zoom in to what His purpose for each one of us is. And that's the journey of life. We're going to walk through life. We're going to have disappointments. We're going to have ups and downs, ins and outs. But there is a particular plan. We can knock on several doors, and a lot of them can be closed, but there's only one door for us. And so as I was thinking rank, God has an army. We are in the army of the Lord. We are coming up and in the church, the old saints would sing the song, I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord. And in the soldier, I don't know all the fullness of how the maneuvering of the United States military forces and everything, but we can go back to the Word of God because it's our roadmap to our destiny. And First Chronicles in 12 and verse 38, these are the men that surrounded David when he became king. They all, in that verse, it says, all these men of war that could keep rank came with a perfect heart to Hebron to make David king over all Israel. And all the rest also of Israel were of one heart to make David king. So it's a plan, it's a purpose, and it was accomplished as they supported King David in his leadership. And Pastor, when you mentioned when Jesus came, it just amazed me how that Jesus had a focus. He had a plan. The scribes and the Pharisees and some of the followers of Jesus, the disciples that he called, they were thrown off because they thought they recognized him as being the Messiah and his purpose, and he was to come and set the children of Israel free. He was the Messiah, the anointed one that they were looking for. And it was written all in the Old Testament. And when it manifested itself, he didn't come in the kingly clothing that they thought. And then under the conception, they threw slings and stones at his ministry when they said, we're not of fornication. They weren't aware. They knew that they saw that scripture in the Old Testament says a virgin shall conceive. And when it manifested itself, they argued, they fussed, they threw stones, they wanted to kill him, and they didn't understand when he came humble. The king came humble on a donkey, not in a chariot with all the glorious attire. And sometimes Jesus hides himself, and he hid himself in that manger as that baby laid, and not in the Robley palace, but he was in a manger. So the things of God can come in a way that it can confound us and baffle us, but when he do move, it has its purpose of humbling us as well as exalting us. But if we humble ourselves and seek his face, as the word of God says, then he'll exalt us in due season. I too, like George, have knocked on so many doors in this season of my life, and every one of them was closed. They were closed in my face, slammed in my face. But I look back and I said, Lord, why? Why? And it's okay to ask God, why? But you keep moving, you keep going, and it's a humbling experience. You recognize that God has all power and he is able to control everything. And going back to the point that I made when Jesus saw John the Baptist beheaded, but he didn't get caught up, oh, they shouldn't have done that. And John the Baptist was the forerunner. It was talked about, it was foretold in Isaiah. You know, as well as in Isaiah, it was foretold about the Messiah. But he knew his purpose. And he also asked, not my will, Lord, let this cup pass from me. But then he said, but not my will, let thy will be done.
I will.
So in
Yes, ma'am.
our Father's prayer, it'll tell us, thy kingdom come and thy will be done.
Can we address some of the things you said, ma'am? Because you said a lot there, and greatly appreciate it, and I embrace everything you said, and you use scripture to support everything that we were talking about. The embracing of life and what happens around you, and yes, ma'am, embracing that is also embracing those disappointments.
Right.
But you, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Hello?
I'm here. I'm listening.
Okay. You guys hear me okay?
Sir?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So all I'm saying is you supported what we had said with scripture, and it was greatly appreciated. And remembering who we are and what that purpose is, and part of what we are set out to do on this phone is to search out the truth that is in the scriptures. So yeah, we support everything that you said, and it was greatly appreciated. We are trying to uncover truth, look at our purpose, and recognize that who we are, who God has created us to be. And as you mentioned, those disappointments that we talk about, and as Barbara said to George, we don't dwell on them. We accept them for what they are. They're learning opportunities. They're opportunities for us to grow, to get stronger, and to be able to see light through them, and we move on. So yeah, we thank you, and we embrace everything that you said, and thank you, George, for joining us today. We appreciate that.
I have a question. Yes,
ma'am.
What's our ultimate purpose? If our ultimate purpose is to be like that which created us, then everything else in our lives will be ordered if we walk therein, correct? If our ultimate purpose, we were created in the image and likeness of Elohim.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's that's why we're here, to be on this earth, on this terrestrial plane, so that those who are not spiritual, who cannot see the spiritual aspect, we have to be that. And sometimes it's the physical that shows that to them before they can see the spiritual. But the physical ought to be a manifestation of the spiritual entity that we are. In other words, if we are loving kindness, if we're compassionate, if we are peaceful, if we seek balance, those things ought to play out, if you will, in whatever we do in life, whatever the roles we have in life. That's what people should see, that spiritual underpinning of this seemingly physical entity. So if we all got to that one purpose, if we all understood that as the main purpose, then everything else we do, It doesn't matter if we are a lawyer or if we are a doctor or Indian chief. It doesn't matter. If we all did that, then we would walk in harmony with each other. We would love each other. We would take joy even in the successes of each other when seemingly we don't have those successes. So I appreciate the young lady and what she said about purpose. I just thought about that ultimate purpose, and if we all tied into that, how easier it would be for us to walk in purpose, whatever we do.
Right. Amen.
Yeah. Can I say something right quick, and I'll let the next person go ahead. I just wanted to, Ms. Simmons said something that brought this to my attention. I forgot about. Pastor's not with us today. At least he said he didn't think he'd be able to be with us today. He's out, so I just wanted to let Ms. Simmons know. My name is Ron Johnson. I'm not the pastor, but I don't think he's on, or I don't think he'll get on, but just wanted to make you aware of that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, sir.
There's something Miss Barbara said that when we think about purpose, that also comes to play to me, and this sounds extremely simple, but it's a difficult thing. Pastor always talks to us about our commitment, and one of the things he said on more than one occasion is, "Are you so committed?" And this is in my words how I'm saying it. Okay, are you so committed that you're willing to give up your free will? Because if you don't give up your free will, it's hard to see that purpose. It's hard to grasp it, to embrace it, because you're living in two worlds. You're living in your own ambitions, and you're trying to see what is spiritually available, what the spiritual being that you are, and you cloud that world by not relinquishing who you want to be. Those strongholds of that free will helps you decide who I am, and all the pride and ambitions that come with that have to be dealt with in order to grow into the spiritual essence of who you truly are. So, I just think everything that has been said, that kind of fits in there as well. That purpose is not something so much that we define on paper and pencil. It is the experiencing of knowing that we too are Elohim, and knowing that the love and peace and harmony that we seek, it has overtaken us, and it's who we are, and we walk in that light. So from that point on, all those things that happen are no longer just hurts and disappointments. They're things that along the journey that strengthens us and builds us to the character that we are to become or have become.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, and this is Nick, if you don't recognize my voice, but I just wanted to add that if there were no challenges, no obstacles, or no closed doors before us here in this experience of life, there would be no need for us to be here at all. And we come here specifically to face those things that are challenges to us, because there is no spiritual growth without challenge. And it is in facing challenge that you learn how to draw out of yourself those things that you need to overcome whatever that challenge is. And in so doing, by drawing out of yourself, you begin to know what is in yourself that much more. And spiritual growth and spiritual evolution is exactly that. It is knowing who you are. It is knowing the true nature of the self by being essentially pushed or forced to draw things out of yourself by the challenges you face. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. If I will, please, we had, after I talked with Pastor the other day, we were looking at what we were going to talk about today, and I had not a clue. So I reached out to Miss Barbara and reached out to Nick and see if they had anything. And Nick was going to bring our lesson today, or is going to bring our lesson today. However, and before he does, Nick sent an article the other day or yesterday, last night sometime, because I fell asleep real early last night, about a green comet that really intrigued me. So if you will, and I don't know if this is what Nick had planned to talk about today, but I was going to ask him to talk about that comet, what comets are in general, and I'm talking spiritually here, and what this means to us. Because I read a ton of stuff on comets that have me a little excited, and I wanted to hear his insight, and anyone else for that matter who may have something they'd like to share about this. Okay, so Nick, if you would please talk to us about that comment, that article you sent.
Sure. And thank you, Ron, and everyone for discussion up until this point. I didn't see that article until last night when I sent it, but I thought it was significant because it was continuing in some way from our previous discussion of seeing the planets line up and how these kinds of things don't happen very often, but they do happen in cycles. And that's the same with this comet. And that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up, especially because the significance of the color, because I think that's also very interesting. But before we get into a different topic, anything or any questions from anyone to wrap up the sort of previous part of our discussion?
Good morning, this is Audrey. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I just wanted to add to what you were saying about the challenges make us who we are. The challenges also help us to realize that we are part of the Creator, that we are Elohim. Because we're not born with that knowledge, we have to come into it. And it's those challenges, those situations, those uncomfortable things that we have to deal with that help to bring us into that knowledge. So yes, we need all those challenges. We need some of those. We need those doors to close or open or whatever they're going to do to help us realize who we are. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Very much agree. We definitely need
that. Nick, and good morning once again. To piggyback off what the young lady just stated about a challenge, one of the things I like about a challenge is when I don't have anyone else to rely on, I can always rely on a successful venture that was a challenge. Like Miss Barbara, Miss Kathy, I'll pick a fight with them because I know I'm going to learn something. Because it's a challenge. So if I'm in a discussion or I have to represent a driver at the job, I will rely on my experience in a discussion with Miss Barbara, Miss Evelyn, Miss Kathy, any one of you all. So a challenge if you don't have anyone else to rely on and you want to make a purchase, no one won't help you. Family members won't help you. Friends won't help you. For whatever reasons, rely on the challenge of a successful venture that you did have and rely on that. So that's what I like about a challenge. That's what I like about, and I show a great deal of appreciation for people who don't think like me. People who think like me, we all right, but I like the person who don't think like me. So I rely on these challenges as an experience. So we should never run from a challenge. And if we are made in the Creator's image, no challenge should ever, all of it's obtainable. All of it's obtainable. If you made in the image of him and you believe you would do great things and greater things than he or she has done. So that's just what I like about a challenge. Thank you.
Can I respond to George, please? George, thank you for that example. When you were saying what you said, it reminded me of grapes. And grapes are nice. Grapes are great. Grapes are good. But you don't get the wine until you press the grapes. Olives are good. You don't get the olive oil though until you press it out. And that's a physical indicator of a spiritual truth. We don't get what we are, the essence, as Audrey said, unless it's pressed, unless we're pressed. And as you say, those challenges, those opportunities are what press it out. And I believe Nick said this too. It shows you who you are. It shows you where you are, how far you've come spiritually, but most importantly, it shows you how far you have to go. So thank you for the example. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good morning, Ron. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
All right,
I
George.
just want to follow up in terms of what was mentioned earlier in terms of the scripture from Jeremiah 29, verse 11. And the reason why I'm mentioning is because I think that as we experience these first days of the new year and just being able to be certain about what we are reading and the power of the word, that it just basically said in Jeremiah 29, verse 11, for I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, but to give you an expected end. I think what's so awesome is to be able to understand, what the definition of the word know means and how powerful it is. So in the Hebrew, it talks about yada, and it speaks on the word know. And what it basically, is saying is to know is to be certain, to be aware of, to be not only aware, but to be able to be assured. And I think that, again, just having that assurance, just to know not only how powerful the word is, but there's that, expected end. And so in times when we go through expectations or we go through challenges, just to know that no matter what, there's a peace that surpasses all understanding when we can appreciate the power of that word. So I just wanted to just share those thoughts because the words are powerful, and when we can really receive them, in the spiritual enlightenment that we are traveling, it's just just so powerful. And I'm just so grateful just to be able to hear that verse that my sister shared earlier and how powerful it is. I just want to share those thoughts. Thanks.
George just opened the door again. Sorry, Nick. No, I'm not sorry. George talked about knowing. Knowing also means it means an intimacy too. And how can we know intimately who we are unless we're pressed and challenged? How can we know where we stand when we say certain things? But it's only when we're backed in a steaming corner that we have to dig deep and know who we are.
So intimacy knowing implies intimacy. And so the challenges that we have also provide intimacy to us if we've dealt with them, because then we can help somebody else. We know exactly, well, not exactly, but we know where they're coming from when we've been there, when we've experienced that. And we know that it's something that people have to deal with on their own, because my intimacy with certain challenges may be a little bit different from yours, because you may already be stronger in a certain area than I am. And I need whatever it is I'm dealing with, whatever that experience is, I need that in order to create that strength in me. So knowing also has to do with intimacy, and that's intimacy in knowing who you are as well. So thank you, George.
Mr. George out of Philly, and Nick, please forgive me, because I know you got a lesson that we need to hear. Yeah, Mr. George out of Philly, you said something that's kind of profound to me that I experienced this week by way of conversation. You said words are powerful. And I was with a group and they said the exact same thing. And I interjected and said, words that form sentences that we elect not to say can be just as damaging as words we do say. So at some point in time, and it doesn't have to be done today, words are very powerful. Yet there are words out here that we elect not to say that are just as powerful. You see someone smelling good, you elect not to say it. Why? Could have done something to the vertebrae, spinal nerves, cerebrum fluid, the 6 chambers that govern maneuverability. You see someone talking recklessly. You don't say nothing. Hey, let me introduce you to something else. So words are powerful, and words that we elect not to say when we're in situations that we just ain't gonna say it. They just as damaging and powerful as when we do say it. Thank you.
When you first started, George, I thought you were going a different direction. I thought you were talking about like some of the thoughts we have. We can have some pretty negative thoughts about things sometimes, and you're right. Those also carry energy with them as well. We have to, and we've talked about this as well. That's correcting our thinking. Being more disciplined in our thoughts and some of those things that can be destructive. Some of the things we think can be destructive. Let me clarify it. But also what you're saying, like the examples you gave, and someone talking out of turn or saying things, they probably shouldn't say, or someone smelling a certain way, whether it's good or bad. I mean, sometimes you can escalate things. Sometimes, at all times, you just need to use wisdom. It's not always in your best interest or that person's or anyone else in that, in hearing that can hear those words. It may not always something you need to say. So I hear what you're saying, and I agree with the thoughts, but you also have to use wisdom. You have to be able to discern and know your audience and know what to say, because it could escalate things and move things in a totally different direction. So, but thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So I do want to continue on to what I wanted to talk about, and it will be sort of a topic change. So just wanted to make sure we left our previous discussion point at a good spot. So what I shared last night, just over text message, was an article, and I kind of did want to speak about it and just relate it to what I believe we are witnessing and experiencing in terms of the spiritual shift that is happening sort of in us and in the earth and the opportunities that it presents. And what I shared last night was just an article about a comet that is apparently going to become visible around the end of January or February. Actually, they're not quite sure if it will be visible, but it will be closest to the Earth around beginning of February. But it has not been seen or not been around for a long time, and tens of thousands of years it has not been where it will be in February. And also the article mentioned the color of the comet, which was likely, it may show up as green in the sky, which I thought was also very interesting. And that's what I want to sort of base my discussion on, because coming off of previous conversations we've had about the planets looking like they're aligned in the sky, and what that sort of means spiritually, and how ancient peoples would have looked at these things, that's all related to what we have the ability to sort of recognize as a sort of sign of the times, representative of shifts and changes that are occurring within us and also in the earth. So the comet, I forget the exact name, but if you want to look it up later, just look up green comet and you will probably get something. Should be around beginning of February, visible in the sky, they think, but it has not been present around the planet for many tens of thousands of years. And I wanted to begin there. So the reason this is significant is because whenever we look up, and whenever ancient peoples looked up into the sky, especially with regards to what it meant for their sort of spiritual state and the spiritual state of humanity as a whole, it was always a marker of time and a sign of the times, if you will. Because when you are sort of more connected to nature, when you are more connected to the nature of your own self, your sense of time is very different from the way we have been taught to view it in essentially sort of European dominated culture. And the way the ancients would have viewed time is a much more cyclical way of understanding how time works. So nature moves in cycles. So things seem to repeat. And we, of course, have phrases like that as well when we say, if you don't know your history, you are doomed to repeat it. Or when we say history moves, sort of seems to repeat itself. And things like that. Even we recognize that there seems to be a sort of cyclical nature to the way events and sort of things play out in the earth. And that is true. And that is because all those things are based in our own development individually, as groups of people in societies, and also collectively sort of on the planet. The patterns repeat because humans are similar, and we repeat things that we have not yet graduated from. But the comet is one of those sort of cyclical markers of time that indicates that a sort of great shift in the way humans think and operate is imminent. And I know we've talked about this before, in that the way in which American, in particular, society is a sort of marker for human society overall is changing and shifting, is also connected to this sort of greater transition that human beings are moving through spiritually, and then of course how in terms of how we structure our society politically, etc. And all those things are extensions of our internal environment and our sense of ourself. So the color green associated with that comment is very significant because that is the color associated with new life. It is the color associated with the heart in the Eastern tradition of spirituality. And those traditions are very much tied into the origin of how we think of Christianity now. And we'll definitely get more into that as time progresses, of course, but the fact that we can visibly see it as that, I thought was significant because the nature of the shift or the transition that we are making is one that moves us back towards a more heart-centered way of being, a more heart-centered sense of self and means of connecting to each other. And that is not without the challenges that we were just talking about. It still comes with that, but when you can enter any challenge that you face with an open heart and willingness to see how that challenge requires you to draw out of yourself something that you did not necessarily know was there, then that challenge becomes a catalyst for the expansion of your own heart and the strengthening of your own heart in the spiritual sense. So that is what I think, that is what I believe this comment is very much an indicator of, that we are coming back around in the great cycle to a more heart-centered, to a more spiritually based understanding of who and what we are and how to relate to each other in the earth. And then there are many changes that will sort of manifest in the way we structure our society, politically, socially, etc. But the origin of all of those changes is in our own spiritual development, is in our own sense of self, and it is in our own connection to our own hearts. So that was a lot just to open. Let me stop there. Are any questions or any comments from what I first said?
Nick, well, what's happening with your boss?
Good morning.
Based on what you stated about the color green, you did say you stated that it's a representation of life, and green is also a color that the more out of balance an individual is in a psychiatric ward, the more you're going to see the color green. Green jello, green toilet paper, green gown, and green is also a common color with blood pressure. Out of curiosity, do you think this is why our currency is green? Because at one time in my life, I did associate you can only have life if you got money, which is completely false. So just out of curiosity, and there was a young man, not a young man, but there's a guy by the name of Imhotep, and he's the father of psychology. It's not Sigmund Freud. Imhotep, and he's also the father of medicine. He was talking about time and things that you alluded to, yet it was written in hieroglyphics. So just back to the original question, or to anyone, do you think this is why our currency is green? Because if green represents life, do you think that's why the money is green? Thank you.
Thank you. Let me respond to that specific thing. Our money it wasn't always green, and the sort of predominant colors are changing. But I do think it is significant, the nature of the color of the thing that sort of represents materially or physically the movement of energy of a sort through and amongst people. Yes, that color is significant. But it really depends on the way in which it's used. Like you said, we also have green associated with sometimes negative things, like when we say somebody's green with envy. But that might be a more sort of European-centric saying. But anyway, it is significant. I'm actually not quite sure of the particular significance, and I actually don't think it's necessarily that important when it comes to the color of the money specifically, I mean. So there are other countries where the money is a lot more colorful. And I'm sure if any of you have seen money from other countries, our money tends to be a bit more boring, honestly. And I think the way in which we use money in this country is, and generally throughout the so-called developed world, tends to be more materialistic. So if it is significant, the color of the money that is, then it's in a way being pointed in a negative direction, more so than a positive one, I would say. And the phrase "in God we trust" is also on money. But as it says in scriptures, to sort of anchor it to something that might be more familiar, you cannot serve God and you cannot serve money simultaneously. So that's another example of something meant for positivity being sort of bent towards a more selfish purpose, because the sort of quote unquote masters of this economic system that we currently live under, money is the closest thing to God to them, which is exactly why it's on there. So I say all that to say there's definite variation to the way in which these symbols appear and the meaning that went into creating them in the way that we use them. So if we put green on the money or whatever other color, it may not necessarily be in line with the, shall we say, the original vibration of what that color is a representation of.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So you were talking about the green represent the heart chakra and new life. So does this mean that we'll have a new consciousness, new beginnings? Yeah, that means that we'll have a new consciousness or a more spiritual, elevated consciousness. That's my question.
Yes, ma'am. I do believe that. I think that is exactly where the direction we're going in. And the heart chakra, for those of you, if anyone hasn't seen that, it basically has the Star of David in it. So if you know what the Star of David looks like, that's what the heart chakra in the Eastern spiritual tradition looks like. It has that in it, and that is sort of very significant because there is a connection between all of these sort of ancient spiritual traditions. Though in the religious sense, modern Christianity obviously does not accept that. Unless you're the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church openly displays various symbols from sort of other religious and spiritual traditions for their own reasons, which we don't necessarily have to get into, but I just wanted to say that because all of these things are connected. And all of these things are also mentioned in some form in the collection of books that we know as the Bible. So when the Magi or the wise men followed a star, quote unquote, to get to the birthplace of Jesus, they were doing a form of astrology. And it is somewhat of a confusing thing to sort of think about how Christianity in the West in particular views astrology as sort of negative or whatever else they might call it. And yet it's sort of mentioned along with the history of how men came to the place where Jesus was born. And just like with many things, it's not the thing itself that is either negative or positive, it's how it is used. And as I mentioned already, when the ancients looked up at the sky and saw the things that they saw and sort of took note of how things changed over time, it was always because it was a marker of time, because they recognized that if you could see or sort of recognize the way in which those things in the sky moved, you could remember how things move in cycles and see how similar events that occurred in the past could occur again. So if you recognized the configuration of the stars in the sky, you can, in some ways, predict what will happen in the future, because if time moves cyclically, if similar things can happen again that have happened in the past at a particular time, if you keep track of time, you can know when they'll happen again, as I mentioned. And so this comet in particular, I think, is significant because it is very much the marker of a beginning, as you mentioned, as Evelyn, when human consciousness was more new, in a sense. It had not yet sort of gone down the path that it currently has, or that we're currently on. It had not yet sort of developed the habits and the distractions, etc., that it already has developed. But we have another opportunity to remove those distractions and to deal more directly with the true nature of the self, so that the sort of next major cycle we enter is founded on a completely different way of being, in a completely different spiritual direction, and definitely a more positive one, I believe.
Hey, Nick, I was thinking about a previous lesson that we had when we talked about the human body being primarily made up of water, and the rhythm of the universe, you know, whether you're talking about the sun or the moon, influences bodies of water on the earth. Is that a tie-in as well, what we're looking at? So this being heart-centered, taking, allowing ourselves to grow closer to who we are, seeing who we are, and growing closer to each other. It sounds like what you're saying too is not only tying us to the universe, but making us one feeds the other. This ties us to the universe, our desire, and the universe ties us to each other. So the two things kind of feed each other and strengthen each other. So when you talk about the new beginnings and the start overs and the fresh starts and all of that seems to be tied together. If your desire, if you the desire for this is something that you see to move in the right direction. Also, who's to say whether or not man's desire doesn't speed up or move the cycle that you're talking about, doesn't influence the cycle that you're talking about?
Yes, thank you. So I definitely believe that depending on where we are in that cycle, there are different let's say, energetic influences that can speed up or slow down in various ways the way in which, well, rather than speed up or slow down, let's say just influence the way in which humans think and feel and how we relate to each other. And it is our response to that influence that can either speed up our spiritual evolution or slow it down. And we are very much entering and are in a time period where, like we have mentioned before, the age of Aquarius, like the water symbolized, which is a symbol for a particular spiritual energy. And it's very much something that pervades our spiritual atmosphere. And it exerts its influence over the way we think and feel individually and collectively. And if we choose to move in a more positive direction collectively, then that becomes what forms the foundation for the nature of the next major cycle. And this comet, representative of the cyclical nature of time and the coming of this next major cycle, I believe is representative of that positive direction. It is definitely representative of the opportunity that we have to move in a positive direction, but I already believe that we've sort of made that collective choice. It is a sort of transition to a more positive, spiritually based way of existing on this planet. So I know we mentioned sort of the age of Aquarius before, but the symbol, the astrological symbol of that being water being poured out, is very much indicative of the nature of the energy that we have access to in order to help us complete this transition. And I think, Ms. Evelyn, you also mentioned the concept of birth or rebirth. That's why, if you are familiar with the practice of giving birth in water, that is becoming more popular. It's the idea that water is, in this case, a representative of a sort of energy that facilitates life, that facilitates the transition from one state to another. And I believe that is the energy of the age of Aquarius. And the symbol of the comet is it sort of very much indicates that we are moving in a positive direction within the context of this energetic influence that we all experience in different ways. Was there a comment or question? Couldn't tell.
Yeah, good morning, Nick. Go ahead, Ron, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, George. I talk enough. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I was just, going to mention that when Evelyn, spoke about consciousness, and you had mentioned in terms of human consciousness, it made me just give some thought in reading the article that you sent, that it spoke about the Neanderthal, it spoke about the Homo erectus, and reading the article, it just made me think about when Pastor also mentioned that we were a nation born on water, but also born in the womb of the feminine energy, and it's just again amazing just to give thought in terms of this particular comet back 500,000 years ago, how it's relevant to today, and how it related to the spirituality of the Homo sapiens, and we can see it even more vividly now in terms of just how the Creator created it from the waters. When we speak of and again, I'm just trying to just grasp it all in terms of just the Pangea of the color green, and just looking at nature, looking at the plant life. But I think that, again, looking forward to, February, or just being able to see how it relates to us, I think it relates to a higher degree of cosmic consciousness. And I believe in what you're speaking about, but we can relate it to, going through, those 4 grades of consciousness, that is spoken about in terms of Imhotep, when we just talk about unconsciousness, not being aware, or being aware of it, but not really, appreciating what it truly means. And then at the same time, as we look at other aspects of simple consciousness, where, we talk about, the animal stage, and we look at it in terms of both subjective or objective, but it just, again, continues to take us through an evolution where we become aware of our own consciousness. But I think that we're moving into, when you talk about the comment or reading it, that we're just going into another cosmic consciousness that I think that we need to be in terms of appreciating the time and season that we're in. So I don't know if that's relevant in terms of the human consciousness, but I think that there is a degree of cosmic consciousness that we're traveling now that's really having us to open up in terms of looking forward, to this this comment that is approaching us. I'm done. I just wanted to share those thoughts. Anybody have any questions?
Not a question, but a comment. When George was talking about nature, and we know in terms of nature, plants are what sustains all of the universe. And most plants are green. They get their green color from chlorophyll, and chlorophyll absorbs light for plants to be able to produce food, to make food for themselves. And I'm just using that analogy when I think about this comet that is green in color. Perhaps it is bringing an sense and an absorbed light that is going to distribute in this area of the universe as it passes, light that we can then use to produce our sustenance, our spiritual sustenance. Anyway, that's what it made me think about. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, and if you look at the way the chakras are aligned, the green chakra, which is the heart chakra, is right on top of the yellow, which is the solar plexus chakra. So the sun feeds the heart in the order of the sort of or the structure of the spiritual being, which we are. And that's why there's a lot of sun worship in a lot of ancient cultures who paid attention to the sky and the configuration of stars. And over time, the same patterns repeat. Things sort of devolve into more sort of empty ritual and religious sort of superstition in the way that I made it. And it sort of divorces from the original spiritual intent. But we have the opportunity to reverse that. So the trend can be upward, back towards spirit and awareness and knowledge, rather than away from, which has been the sort of average of the human trajectory in a lot of ways, until the nature of this shift starts to make its sort of presence more obviously felt.
Nick, also the heart chakra deals with love, right? And I feel that the universe is telling us, love who you are, love yourself. Once we learn to love ourselves, then we can start loving each other. Because it always starts with us, right? With yourself. And I think that's one of the messages that that comet is bringing, that color green, is because we don't love who we are. We don't love ourselves. Once we start loving ourselves, we'll treat people better. We start realizing that we are one. I can't do it without you. You can't do it without me. It's imperative that we get that message. That's all I want to say. I think I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss Evelyn, one of the things I just want to add, just want to know your interpretation of it. Whenever you fall in love with yourself, just go and be prepared. You're going to piss a lot of people off. I just want to know, how you feel about what I said. When you fall in love with yourself, and I shouldn't say piss people off, but you're going to aggravate some people. How you feel about that?
First of all, George, I think we should take the word fall in love. That's a European concept. You either love or you don't love. But anyway, I wasn't just talking about relationships. I'm just saying just in general. And what I mean by we need to start loving who we are. Stop beating up on yourself. Stop looking outside of yourself to fulfill a void that you have, thinking that someone outside of you can fill that void. You and the source and the universe that you are, you can fill your own void. Don't look outside of yourself for someone else, things, or a person to fill that void. That's what I'm talking about with love.
Well, I agree with you, Miss Evelyn. That I like that. I agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have we really listened to this conversation, this lesson, and see, because we talk about the sign of the times. This is a marker for us. This lesson is showing us something here. Can this be? Because one of the things Nick talked about when something I wrote down when we moved to a more heart-centered way of life, we have been doing that for some time now. The self-examinations and the learning to love ourselves and love mankind and embrace who we are, and we've been moving in that direction. And can it be that this lesson is a marker or a gauge for us to see that the Creator is allowing us to see more than we've ever seen before, which is quite evident, I suppose, but not only see more, but influence, be a major influence in the universe, that this lesson, this green comet, is a way of showing us that the universe trusts us to do what is best for mankind, that this is a group that will be prayerful. This is a group that will guide their meditations and their thoughts. This is a group that will not be distracted, and to see what it truly means to be heart-centered, to understand the symbols and all the things that are going on, and to allow yourself to freely be a part of the flow of the universe. Could that be part of what we're discussing here? Because this, if you stop and think about it, is an extremely powerful. We're talking about, the eighth sense and the age of Aquarius and moving into a new place and a different energy in the earth and a rebirth. This is just a powerful thing to think about. So I just kind of listening at this, the conversation and the comments and the gaining of the understanding, to me, is far greater than, I think, just hearing what we're saying.
Well, we're intertwined with the universe because we are the universe. And when we start to, as you say, embrace who we really are, everything is a vibration, and
Yeah.
the energy of love has a certain vibration, as does peace, as does joy, etc. And so when our resonance comes up, that we are vibrating, that's what we vibrate, peace, joy, and love, then we get in sync with the vibration of the universe, and we are likely to see so much more in the universe itself, which says to us, yeah, we're dancing now. If you know what I mean, we become intimate with the universe, and because the universe is us and we are it, and we dance. That intimacy shows in the way we resonate. So yeah, I agree with you.
Thank you. Beautifully said. Thank you.
Hey, this is Kevin. And BJ, you just touched on the concept of vibration. And earlier, Nick mentioned that he wasn't sure what the name of the comet was, but I looked it up, and it is C-2022 E3 VTF, which, if you were to arrange the letters numerologically, meaning A being 1 and Z being 26, it breaks down to the number 69. It reduces to a number 33, or in reverse, which Z being 1 and A being 26, it reduces to the number 30. Either way, what I found is this comet is, or at least the name of the comet, vibrates with the numbers 3, 6, and 9. And those numbers are rather significant because of how they interact and interplay, and as they visibly appear to us in our psyche. The number 6 and 9 are actually interchangeable numbers. And if you look at them, you can see that they're essentially polar opposites. But as we know with the law of polarity, there are no opposites. There's just different ends of the spectrum. And the number 3 is a factor of 6 and 9. So it leads me to kind of, I guess, wonder and go down the road of what is the vibration of this comet. We're talking about the color green. We're talking about the heart chakra. We're talking about renewal of energy and life and things like that. I just wanted to at least bring the name up for anyone who wanted to look it up and just touch on what I just researched. That's all I got.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, let me go down that rabbit hole or that path a little bit. So, the numbers 3, 6, and 9, and let me just preface this by saying, I just want to put this out there, and this might be seemingly a little bit either off topic or far out there, or a little bit difficult to penetrate, but I just want this sort of energy to permeate this conversation. So Kevin is exactly right. Like 3, 6, and 9 are all harmonically linked. 6 and 9 are sort of polarities of each other. And it all relates to the heart chakra in that it is about balance and completion. And also it sort of more obviously relates to the number 3, where we talk about it was 3 days for resurrection. And it is directly related to, in the Bible, in Matthew, beginning at Matthew 38, and sort of ending on Matthew 40. Matthew chapter 12, verse 48 through verse 40. And that is related to the concept of a sign of the time. So let me read that for you so you don't have to look it up. So verse 38, Pharisees said to him, they're speaking to Jesus, "Teacher, we want to see a sign from you." Verse 39, but he answered and said to them, "An evil and adulterous generation craves a sign, and so no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah the prophet. verse 40. For just as Jonah was in the stomach of the sea monster for 3 days and 3 nights, so will the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. So the heart chakra is 2 triangles, one pointing up and one pointing down. Each triangle has 3 points. So there's 2 triangles, that's 6 points. So it is the balance of the masculine and the feminine that creates the stability that allows for the acceleration of spiritual evolution to the 9 from the 6. So in the verse from Matthew that I just mentioned, so Jonah being in the belly of the fish, and of course we all know that story, for 3 days and 3 nights, is directly a symbol of this sort of entire, I think, thing we've been speaking of. Because the only sign that is given is the sign of Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish or the whale, or however you have read it translated. And it immediately before that said, an evil and adulterous generation asks for a sign. No, what that is speaking to is just a sort of mentality that is off balance and one that is not connected to the spiritual source within self and without self. So adultery doesn't mean in the literal sense where we're talking about you sleeping with somebody else other than you're married to. It means you attempting to draw life from something other than your own spiritual source to the creator. So you sort of commit adultery, quote unquote. You attempt to interface with or draw life from something else than the true source of life, which you are connected to through knowing the nature of yourself. So as a result of that, requesting a sign, quote unquote, it's out of ignorance or selfishness that you sort of say, give me some sort of physical proof that I can control, that I understand in a way, as opposed to trusting the nature of the connection to source, to the creator that is present within you, that you are, in order to teach you what it is you need to know, in order to show you what it is you can recognize as a sign of the times, as opposed to something you attempting to create and sort of set within the bounds of your own ego. And going back to Matthew, where it says the only sign that will be given is the sign of Jonah. Essentially, if you are, quote, evil and adulterous in the spiritual sense that it's speaking of, then the sign you will seek is one of, or the only sign that will be given is one where your own sense of connection will be thrown into turmoil. And internally, you will be, let's say, in a state of anxiety or confusion, because your own ego is blocking your ability to draw from what truth and reality is, wherein you would receive the sign that you seek, and the actual one you need to receive and recognize, rather than the one your ego sort of says you want. And there we have 3 days and 3 nights, meaning the completion, meaning, in this case, the exhaustion and the recognition that as long as your ego covers the connection that you have to the creator, you will constantly be in that state of sort of confusion and turmoil. You will constantly be in that sort of belly of the fish until you have completed that desire to be egotistical. And I think there's more to it, but trying to explain it in the best way I currently understand. So after those 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish, you emerge after you've let go of your desire to place your own ego onto what you see. After you let go of your desire to attempt to define what you want as a sign, then you have the opportunity to recognize what is already present and is already given. And in this case, I think this comet is very much one of those symbols or signs that is recognized when you are not trying to control or sort of egotistically project what you think it should be, because this sign, for example, is not something that is recognized by the religion of Christianity at all. And most of astrology is, of course, not accepted. And that's partly the result of spiritual ignorance. And that's not to say that astrology cannot be misused. It, of course, can. And you can become sort of confused or attached to it in other ways, etc. But the point is, when your ego is not ruling your ability to see, you can perceive these signs more clearly. And they are always given, and they are always present, especially when these sort of shifts in consciousness, when these markers of spiritual evolution and change, or when these periods of spiritual evolution and change are upon us again. There are always signs of the times. I think I'll stop there. I think there's more that I want to get into, but let me just give you a chance to digest that a little bit.
Well, Nick, let me just a quick reaction to that. My sense is, why do you need a sign? What is a sign? What's the purpose of a sign? And the caution I sense with a sign, again, is if we're basically sitting, I can't remember all the parables or whatever, that people just basically did nothing until something came to them, and then they decided they would or they wouldn't embrace it. It's a little bit of that. But I think the universe is just going to continuously give us opportunity. And at the end of the day, do we take it or not? Some will, some won't. But at the same time, I sense that the goalposts are being moved. So we don't ever go back to the original or previous, what do you want to call it, sort of wholeness of ignorance. It's different. But there's still, you still need to participate and act. And act can be a very passive thing. It's just an acceptance. You don't have to, do something demonstrable, fall out on the floor during church kind of thing, to accept and receive. I think of it more, I guess, in a Buddhist way, where if you said, oh, there's a sign, your Zen master would, and am I right? Is there a sign? In which case your Zen master would probably smack you on the back of the head and said, there's a sign. What do you think about that one? So some of this, I think I'm mixing up a bunch of stuff, because to me, there's just so many things to unpack in saying this, but it's a sign. Some will see and form an affinity. Some will resist. And if it's as it's necessary, the universe will continue, spiritual universe will continue to present more opportunities. And if they have to sort of do it in a more coalesced way, that there's a real sign to move some more people spiritually, it will. But otherwise, that's what it represents to me. And I know this isn't very clear, but it's just, well.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I agree. Where does your need for a sign come from? When you say you need a sign, you're saying the thing you need is not already present. And
when you think about the responsibility of self, so to speak, for the moment, what are you doing? If I'm waiting for a sign, I'm not exercising quote unquote free will in a positive, active way. I'm just waiting until you convince me, so to speak. And I may choose not to be convinced. That arrogance is still there too. You can be as ignorant as long as you want to be, or need to be, out of fear or whatever, which is usually what it is. So these signs, we call them signs, these events, these energies are going to continue to come and go, and they will benefit us as we're able to accept and align or connect with what they offer, or others won't. And, the goalposts will get moved again, and then we'll go back through that kind of cycle again. However you want to characterize it. Just seems to me that's what this can be an indication of. But if people are saying, okay, it's here, it's finally here, the big sign has come. No, I don't get that. But it's again, part of the continuing opportunity that life offers for you to connect if you want.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a bunch
I-
of comments on other aspects, but that's enough.
I very much agree. Thank you. And if we think about it in terms of the religion, quote unquote, of Christianity, what is the only sign that they are looking for is the man, Jesus, to float down from the sky. This is not going to happen. And if this is the first time you're on the phone in here, this is something we've definitely spoken about before. That is an intentional misinterpretation. And it is clinging to that sort of religious, egotistical ignorance that prevents you from being able to read what is already in the room. The thing you seek is not out there sort of failing to make its appearance. It is present. Your ability to see it is what is in question, not it. And if you're on this call, then I very much believe you're part of the group of people in the earth who are seeing it, at the very least, knowing that there is something else to be seen. And I think in that capacity, we exercise our responsibility to form a sort of spiritual anchor for the sort of next cycle that we're moving into and have already moved into and are in the beginning of. And all of that is indicated by the comment, by whatever sign that we recognize is present at our time in the earth, because they're always there.
Can I say something right quick?
Yes, sir.
Sign. The word sign is essentially the beginning of the word significance. And so I do agree with the continual opportunities that are available to us in the universe. But I do think it is important that we recognize the time that we're in, the points that we're in. It's kind of like a bicycle wheel is round and it looks the same on all points, but only one point of that bicycle wheel is touching the ground at any point in time, and it doesn't touch the same place once if it's traveling. So when I think about significance, it's kind of it goes back into intention. The intention of this call, the intention of your own will to do whatever it is that you choose to do in life. The intention is what determines the significance of the sign, what I'm understanding.
I think I would say, yeah, intention determines or influences your capacity to perceive the significance of that sign.
Or to see the sign at all.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, I would like to say also, I said I was finished, but I'm not. Anyway,
Oh, go
I
ahead.
like Richard. Thank you. Thank you, Richard, for what you said previously. Well, what you just said, because there were times when I would say to myself, to God, to the source, or me, I need a sign. And what you just said really, it makes sense. I really appreciate what you said. And also, Nick, you were talking about when you were talking about the 3 days and the 3 days or whatever. I got from that is you get what you put out there. So if you put out that negative image, it comes back into your reality. That's why it's imperative that we stay focused. As Barbara said, some years ago, pay attention. It's imperative that we have to maintain. I'm not saying we're gonna always stay in balance, but the thoughts that we put out there, it's imperative that we try to stay focused and make sure that they are. Well, I can't say make sure that they are a certain way because I don't want to shape anybody's reality or whatever. But again, you get what you put out there. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Well, I think there's an aspect too of just chill, relax, be open. I worry sometimes when people say focus. It's like there's an intensity that's attached to that. And that's how you run right by it. That's the whole thing again in meditation. It's just be open. It's there already. Just connect with it. It doesn't take effort. That's the trick. So I think some of that language and some of that action just furthers the separation that's there, because I just do not believe in my bones that, as Einstein sort of said, the universe doesn't waste things. And if you think of that on a spiritual level, the creator didn't create beings, if you want, who are some of whom would succeed and some would fail. It's just a process and it's a journey. But in the end, what? If you have to think of an end, everybody's going to cross that line. The question is whether you do it more easily or more painfully. And even in the pain, we know that there's an opportunity to grow. There's also an opportunity to cower more. So it's all, the hard part is it's all been laid out and I struggle with it, just letting go, relax, and be love. Just love. And yeah, I'm done, I guess.
That's the whole thing. Everything that is not that is the result of some way in which we have become distracted. The teacher, as it says, I know I've said this before, but the word pyramid, and the pyramid is also a triangle in the represented two-dimensionally anyway, but the word pyramid means fire in the middle. And the greatest teacher that we could ever have is our own fire in the middle, our own heart, because it is simple and it is always present, and it requires us only to relax the sort of distraction and distortion away from awareness of the movement that the heart wills for us. Anyway, thank you.
What I was going to say is it's not that we need a sign. The signs are always there. It goes back to what Evelyn said about what Barb said a long time ago. Pay attention. Everything that we need is there. We just have to pay attention. And yeah, it may take us finding it hard for some people and still harder for other people, but the quote unquote signs are there. Everything. I mean, the Bible tells us that that everything we need to know is right there in us. So we just have to pay attention. So they're not really signs, but they're there for us to see or not see, depending on where we are in this process.
Thank you. I wholly agree.
Yeah. Beautiful discussion, everyone. It's about 11:53. Can I tell you how talk about signs and paying attention to stuff where I am with this? A couple of weeks ago, before I looked at 1 Samuel, I was looking at Matthew 12 and trying to prepare a lesson because there's a lot in there. And I got to the point with Jesus talking about Jonah, and I didn't get it. It didn't come to me. And I looked at it, and I thought, okay, it's not time for you to look at this yet. Go find something else. That's not the one. And I didn't look at it anymore. And lo and behold, Nick come today and explained it, and it made sense. It fell in line with what we're saying. It resonated with me. It supports what we've been talking about and where we are today. So I mean, to me, that's extremely significant. That was beautiful to me, or has been. And with that, I want to ask Nick: are you going to be available tomorrow? Can we pick up here tomorrow?
Yes, I'll be here tomorrow.
Okay. So if you guys don't mind, we'll call it a day. A lot has been said, and for us to kind of meditate on and give some thought to. And if you have any thoughts and questions, please jot them down. Beautiful discussion. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Again, thanks, Nick, and thank everybody for your thoughts, questions, and comments. Thank you.
See, Ron,
Have a great.
what you
Thank
just
you.
said,
Yes, ma'am.
signs
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
what you just said, the signs are there. We just have to pay attention.
Yes. Yes.
Because if
Definitely.
you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't have gotten it.
Yeah. Yeah. That was beautiful to me. Of all places for him to go for his example, that was beautiful. Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
You got
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Talk to
Great day,
you
brother.
tomorrow.
Bye. Talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you.